What's up? Are you staying alive? Mechlon 1000. Mechlon? Is that a sci-fi robot from the future? Mechlon model 256. Robots are taking over. How about that British pound? Anybody trade this motherfucker today? That's a 20 pip grid. So I traded that on my phone and I was disconnected, thank God. So I double loaded the script here and I don't trade the pound, but who could resist, right? I could see that on the radar. And look at this motherfucker, dude. Look at this. Now this is what I'm talking about. If you had the right take profit for that, if you could absorb a 60 pip slam with a master stop at the round number, you are one rich motherfucker, okay? And you are one poor motherfucker if you didn't get the fuck out here, because look at this rape back. So, this doesn't tell you the story. This does. What people don't realize about Forex is that a market can move 80 fucking pips in under 5 minutes. Right? Am I right or am I right? I may not know everything, but I buy it right now at the market. Look at that beautiful top bottom. So the past doesn't, like the past of the if you got beat up on this, you'd be afraid to go trade this thing. But if you had a trade plan for every zigzag at the 20-yard line here, you're a fucking genius. Look at the 20 pip pivot. How dumb do you feel not buying at the 20-yard line and selling at the 20? So I got out. I never witnessed this. In fact, I came home and I was like, I'll take a look at that fucking British pound. I'm expecting it to drip down. Like, I didn't even see the big structure. Like, I didn't see this rape-a-date setting up. Wow. Like, talk about retest. Talk about auction. Fuck. Dude. Like, imagine you sold up here on new highs. And then you bought back on new lows and you traded it both ways at Tuesday. Come on. Dude, that's insane. It's just like back here. Remember this shit? The old trap and rape? Okay. Forex rape. Trap. Oh, it's going higher. Really? Okay. I can see your bullishness. Look at this 40 pip window of reversal. Back to here. So who's making money? The trend trader or the range trader? Like, I know it's in an uptrend, but don't forget, if you bought this breakout and you put your stop here, you just got raped. The prison guard raped you with his baton, with a mop, the plunger. So there was this movie, I'm watching all these old movies, and there was one that was done in like the 70s, right? A gritty movie, I can't remember who the guy, a famous actor, and the guy gets raped. And he's so ashamed of it. And since he's a cop, he doesn't want to tell anybody, and I think he kills himself or something. I thought, well, you see? It's not easy for anybody out there. But yeah, this British pound, so, wow, what's the next step, right? I'd say, well, that 5-minute chart, right? So I just bought it. Now they're crushing me. Look at. So what's the answer? Let them stop you out. and then put buy limits here for the next 8 hours or whatever, how much money you got. So you just need to feed your account money for each trade. Or you're sitting here with your finger on the trigger. Now, I'm going to buy right now because it's the top of the hour. Well, I'm probably getting filled on something. But see, this is too wide a spacing for a scalp. So I'm going to go for super tight just below that wick. Now this is the stop hunt. I'm assuming they're going to stop me out, right? Pull it back. So the market's constantly getting ready to do something. And you're either scalping all these zigzags on the 1 minute chart and you have a trade plan for that, which basically would entail that you place orders like crazy amount of tickets, and then this just auto scalps out of like 100K and you just made like 20 bucks or $100, right? This 20 pip grid. So you could have made 50 bucks here if you got in just right. And if not, they're going to stop me out. It comes back, it fills the limits, and you start all over again. It's just rinse and repeat, really. See, they're coming after me now. So I got buy limits down there for the stop hunt. Because I'm assuming they're going to do that. I'm just assuming that's how it is. All day long, there's always somebody getting raped. Okay, it's like prison. What is the statistics on prison? Every hour. Did anybody see there was this really hot chick prison flick. And it's like Women in Chains. I came across it actually when I got, am I long? A little bit. I don't know, after the British pound, I'm afraid to do anything. I don't trust any market now. I feel like I'm in the shower in prison. I'm afraid to drop the soap. It depends. Yeah, I don't know. I want them to fill my limit orders, I guess. It's a contest, I think. Are they going to stop hunt me, or am I going to pull the trigger? Like, I would just lightly get in at the market to make 5 pips in Asia. And then I think the rest of it is having orders that last maybe an hour, 2 hours. Like every pip deep or something. Getting the right size is the whole trick, because based on what's going on at the moment too. So it's better if they stop you out and you get in deeper for a high probability like value zone, or you like to watch the 5 minute chart or the 1 minute chart and go, oh yeah, this looks like a fucking, or watch the tick chart and go, oh yeah, I'd pull the trigger on that. But I don't think it pays to pull the trigger on willy-nilly, because well, I guess if you're going to trade with a 20 pip stop on a 1K, then it's like, okay, right, you're risking $2, you know that, you can handle it. But in the end, you're going to have some thing where you, like right now, I got this button here. It buys at 8K, and it just cashes. I mean, this is scalping. It's 4 minutes after the top of the hour. It's just pulled back hard. Yeah, you could buy that for a bounce of like 3 pips, maybe. But I don't know if it's worth getting carried away at trading at the market, honestly. I think it's so stupid. I never lost more money in my life. Now, if you get in with if you don't, I don't know how people do it. They get in really big. Boom, I'm getting in. I'm like, dude, you're down like $300. I mean, dude, I should be making $300 every time I pull the trigger. You know, my view of it is, if all I'm doing is watching these goddamn markets all day, these fucking ridiculous price swings you can't even fucking believe, you know. I mean, British pound today, you could have just donated your whole day to the British pound today across 3 accounts with multiple strategies running. Every strategy was a winner. Your limit orders were winners. You fucking pull the trigger, get the fuck out at the top of the hour, thing turn on a dime, bam, bam. I mean, it's like literally, you're like the pinball wizard on that thing. I mean, just imagine this. Imagine you had a trade plan for this shit. You're buying this pivot later on in the, like, you got out, you hit a button that lays in limits you're buying a standard lot every 20 pips. The whole thing retraces within, what, you had to wait how much time? You get a double bottom here, probably divergence on the 3-period half. I mean, come on. People that traded the pound today that had a trade plan for all that, just amazing, right? You could have done it. You could have hotkeys. Of course, you're going to widen that stop up quite a bit, though. Whereas you're running, so you could run a 30 pip stop on dollar Swiss, but on British pound, you got to be like ready for some serious drama. You'd never survive it. You just couldn't do it. You know, you'd have to dial that account in just to the pound. So in the real world, with real money, you're going to take an account. I mean, for me, I can't imagine trading more than one currency on an account unless I'm just dicking around like, oh, let me just trade a little bit of this, that, because in the end, there's no fucking way on God's green earth that I can, in context, hold together. Like, if you've ever scalped a 5-minute chart, it's like you can't look at a currency pair. If you look at the 5-minute chart, you go, okay. But then you can't, you know, go and trade another currency. I can't. Another 5-minute chart with the same intensity. Okay, I can't play 2 instruments at once and be very amazing on one instrument. But I could, across 4 accounts, trade the euro dollar and be like, oh, there's the swing trade for that, no fill, but didn't blow up the account. This one I'm trading the shit out of. You could do that for the British pound today. You could have had a so you have your limit strategies running on a dedicated account. You can see the metrics. Did your limit strategy work? You get another account. So I figured out how to copy the, like I said, it couldn't be done in Windows 8.1, which is wrong. So I totally fucked up my copy. Because I was copying this goddamn roaming address, which, if you do that, it literally, you cannot put that in a folder and isolate it. You have to go to the old-fashioned, you have to go to 386X. This is probably very sophomore to people, but just because I can trade doesn't mean that I can navigate the fuck. Oh, so I got Linux running, which kind of got like a Linux hard on because of the fucking fact that talking directories. And I watched a video from the 70s on Unix that is so fucking hysterical that I was going to play it in the background. You have to see this Linux video where the guy's talking about the core structures of a computer. But it was beautiful because it's about trading in a way where you have this kernel, very simple thing that you can just add on to. So it's a bottom-up thing. So top-down, though, you have one instrument and you have multiple strategies on one instrument. And multiple accounts. And so you can have complete diversification of how you approach anything. Because you could just say, well, I'm going to scalp it. I'm going to sell on one account, buy on the other account, you know. And you always know what time it is. And you're like, well, you know, if they stop me out of that, then I'm going to buy on the next 18 pip window for whatever that is. You know. And so if you have the British pound running, though, I mean, that's like, you're going to trade half the size you normally trade because it's moving 100 pips in moments. Whereas, yeah, I mean, you know, euro dollar sold off 50 pips, but I mean, come on, it took forever compared to, like I'm looking at the 4-hour chart here. It took like a whole week to sell off. What this thing moves in 1 day. So British pound can move 5 times more ATR. There was a time last week we got 100 pips out of the. But you see a 200 pip swing on British pound. Pretty insane. So I'm running a 1-hour chart. I'm just running 1 hour, like I'm running the plunge orders, the swing orders on that, and then I got my finger on a scalping button. And I'm getting in lightly at the market. So somebody asked me, well, how many dollars per pip? Well, it depends, because the swing account's not going to fill unless it gets filled. Like that strategy is designed to run, you know, it fills every hour or every 2 hours there's a fill. Or I pull the trigger on that and I lightly get in some, you know, obvious structure issue. Like we're there, I'm not in big enough. Okay, I'll buy one at the market, but I'm not going to, I have a dedicated scalping account. And then I can run the also dedicated hedge account where you just run a hedge system. So like you have a non-directional system, because I couldn't find anybody to trade for me yet, so I just decided to set up different strategies. So I have a hedge strategy, but you can only run that on that one account, because you really can't decipher whether or not that performs well, and then you'd fine-tune that a little bit. So there's always something to do, because if it turns out that you trade like shit at the market and you trade better on non-directional breakout, just dumb shit like the market goes sideways for 3 hours, and you're like, well, okay, if it breaks out, you know, I definitely want to go, you know, the other way or something, then that turns out to be the better trade. You know, what are you going to do, right? No, I hope they just filled me there. So they just smashed it back here. I wasn't paying attention there. Oh, see that little wick there? I'm not sure if that filled. So you'd have to pull the trigger on that little wick there. Now people say, oh, I sniped that. Yeah, but see, you really just had limits sitting here, right? Because you knew that was a stop hunt. It's just dumb shit like that. Fucking. And so you either waited for that fill, or you saw that spike down on the tick chart and you pulled the trigger. Now, every time you reframe the market, it looks completely different. Like if you look at the 5-minute chart, you'd be like, wow, that's a completely different story. That is a total different I mean, and you zoom in, you're like, oh, that's a completely different story. You're like, yeah, I'd buy that stop hunt. Fuck yeah. So, now you could have sold for 2-3 pips here. You could have bought. Now that's the 5-minute, pretty quiet. 15 minutes, like, you know, you can't even fucking tell what's. I mean, you can't hardly see that setup. So 5-minute. Now they could plunge it all the way down here, so I put in 8-hour orders, just kind of being ridiculous here. But, you know, this is always going to be good to buy down here. Whether it's an hour or 8 hours from now, I think this is always good buy territory. So that's the other thing is backup plan, right? They stop you out. You're going to buy, here on limits. They're very tight stops. So getting the size right, I'm going to buy, I think this is 8K every time I hit the button. So they're coming all the way back to here now. So you can see it on the, now you can see it on the 15. So they have to gobble up all of this. You're either running, if you're bullish, you're running trailing limits. You're buying people's stops off them right now. I got to fix the scale here. Now there's stops down here, so we could crush all the way down to here. So that's another possibility. So if that happens, you'd have to, they'd stop you out. You have to buy, I'd buy almost everything for the next 20 pips because this is not a big moving currency. It's not like the British pound ripped down. Okay, so it's just expecting them to bid it down and stop people out, you know. Now, if you bought every 5 minutes that it pulled back, you're in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5K right now. If you had a 20 pip stop and you just kept lagging into this thing. Here you could have done the same thing. You could have sold here. 1, 2, 3, 4K short. Every, or 5 if you count this one. So the 15-minute chart, less trading, right? Less punishment. So we've gone down 1, 2, 3. There's a 3K. So in 1 hour, you'd be long 3K there if you're buying pullbacks. So you're super small at the market. Because most of the stuff you'd want to get filled is on limits. You're just buying it for your ego. You know, you're just pressing the button for your ego. I mean, really, it's kind of ridiculous. Oh, look, I bought that bottom. Yeah, but it's probably not the bottom. I can't imagine, right? I mean, like, look at this window here. If you're looking at that very last wick there, see, that guy's up on that trade already. Some guy with a hyper tight spread, hyper tight. You know, like, just, you can't even see it, right? That's why you pay commissions with zero spread. It's psychological, right? Because you could just get in really heavy here and be like, oh yeah. And then you could have had orders here that never filled, but if you notice here, you would have filled, see? This is very sharp. There's 3 wicks here on the 1 minute chart, so you would have filled that. Right? If you're placing orders based on that logic, it's obvious, right? On the 5 minute, it's very obvious, right? It's this basement floor here. In fact, that was a little baby stop hunt just before that big move. See, you're getting in razor sharp. That's 3 pip window. So the guy with the bad spread had to pay this, and he's finally up on that. Maybe not quite up on that trade because it's 7/10 of. It's not even a. And so here was the ultimate stop hunt. And they're going to cash out at that doji. Most people are going to get out there, right? This is 50% or whatever. Some Fibonacci hell or something. I don't know. Fibonacci stuff, probably. So, now I'm going to buy that at the market. But I really should have gotten filled, and the limits would have been the better option. Here's a stop hunt right to this 1 hour wick. See, now they crush it down again. So that trade's over. For that, see, the 1 minute traders got out because this bottom, they cashed out there. That bottom just became a top for them. They cashed out. So now we need the bulls to come in and take it through that. Otherwise, they're going to tank it again. Let's keep smashing it down. So I wasn't really paying attention to the margin there. So this is not real money. I'm just talking about the market, you know. Yeah, you'd want to get in here, right? So if you're a 1 minute trader, you're like, yeah, they got to reject this. And the sellers are really going to come in here and I can get out and then reload. And if that was the case, imagine you're trading real money. You're going to have to dump and then reload like this and do the same thing all over again. Right? Because every bounce is a dead cat bounce until it engulfs the whole bounce zone, right? On the 1 minute chart, it's pretty obvious. See, the sellers came in there. Now they could crush it down. See, all these buy limits below to pick up the slack in case it keeps tanking. Having the 3 pip stops in here, which I think I have a 6 pip stop, that keeps you from blowing up the account. So here's the 1 minute chart. Sellers have the ball and looks like they're going to go down and come after. Now the next wick on the 5 is here. So it's right near the 20-yard line. So I would buy into that on limits. So this is like about, I don't know, 10K. But put most of the K right at the 20-yard line. Because that's the sweet spot. That's where everybody's really going to get in heavy. Is the 20. That's the best price on there. Because if you want to make 20 pips, you're going to want to buy here and then ride it through all the way back to this perfect pivot on the 5 minute time wise. So we're right in the premium entry zone here still. Kind of retesting that wick. We got a retest on that 5 minute wick. Or you can put a buy stop up here, I suppose, right? I might even have a button here for that. So here's a buy stop, 2 pips above. That'd be your confirmation entry, right? It starts to engulf, and you're going to buy that on stops. I think I got 15-minute stops here. So buy one at the market, because that's the 5 minute chart. We're kind of trapping people. Let's hope. And let's see if they're going to reject this. So they just retested into the exact pip onto right there. Now we got to cut through the floor. Got to blow out this price now. And now we've kind of got, I'd say, an 8 pip range going here. And over the last, I'm just counting this part from this peak to, I'd say, wow, you look at this whole thing, it's huge. All right. Plenty of room for retests there. Okay, they're coming into my limits now. So I got limits all the way down to this. Because you could come to the 20 easy. Got 5 minutes before the bottom of the hour, so I kind of walk it down here. The trend traders are still, they sold that last rally. So this might be the final destination. But in the meantime, every 5 minutes, I'll pull the trigger at the market. If they don't fill me in the limits, then I'm going to dump. I'm just going to grab it at the market. But I put like a 10, I put a 30, 40K into this price. So I'm going to buy one at the market. No, it's actually 8K. It looks like we might go to that 20. So we're just trying to make about 20 pips. So maybe you got to come down 8 to make 20. Okay. We just now, we got 5 minutes till the bottom of the hour. We could go up about maybe to here. That's the, we got to get through that. That's the big obstacle now. So be cashing out into that. So how big you get in, I guess, is the whole trick, right? Because I'm actually got a bunch of shit in the background here running. To show you how complicated trading really is look at these other currencies. Like, what's the story here, right? Now this is buy limits waiting to get filled. Look at this thing turn at the 20-yard line on the half hour. It's retarded, utterly. You put buy limits here, right? Look at this dollar Swiss. I bought that just because it was here at the 20. I'm going to cash out of that. So that was running in the background. Look how stupid this thing is. Look at this turnaround at the 20-yard line. I don't know if I'm long that. Those are buy limits. So here you just go, all right, this is a top. That's 20 pips right there. Look at this thing bobbing off the 20. Look how much this thing loves 20 pips compared to how it loves Fibonacci. It doesn't like Fibonacci. It likes 20 pips. Look at this 20 pip. What is with Fibonacci stuff, dude? I mean, really? You're kidding, right? No, it really works. I know, right? But I can't do the math on 618. 20 pips, I get my brain around that. That's pure goober. Okay. So we're going to make it, we're not going to make it to the 20. Look at this thing tagging into the 20. Yeah, this doesn't move that much. Not like that British pound. Yeah, British pound's out of control. Look at this stuff. Look at this. One day, 120 pips, then follow through into here, into the grab bag of stops. It's marching north. So, but man, I'm telling you, that pullback, counter trend trading that. Wow. Power wick. Welcome to Power Wick. How I blew up my account. That British pound, even this thing. What the hell's going on here, people? Look at this thing go flying through the it goes flying through this round handle like. No, there's no support. It fell into this hole. You could have dude, you could have made so much money just buying new fucking lows here like an idiot. You're at break even on that. You're finally back to being underwater. You're back to break even on that one. It's terrible. It's a crime. So Charday says it's a crime. 73 pips is trying to make. I watched his video. He just did a video on his talking about his demo account and stuff. Yeah, I guess I'm trying to relate. I'm trying to speak to the ICT people. Bunch of people, bunch of ICT people out there. Coming to 20. No, we've all known about the 20-yard line. And I don't know why ICT uses the Fibonacci, to be honest with you. I think it's the reason why people don't use a cracked mirror or something like that. I mean, it's a superstition. Isn't it? Stevie Wonder talked about that. I don't get it. But, you know, I think it's just like, how big is your account? Can it afford? How much money do you want to risk per day, per hour? Because today you could have risked $50 an hour on that British pound. You could have risked $50 every 15 minutes. You could have had psycho plunge orders in there that lasted 15 minutes. You could have hit a button and threw out limit arrays that just were like insane. And you could have just placed all those orders in a grid before anything even happened today. You could have laid out your whole trade plan and not have to babysit anything today in the British pound. Or even the euro, for that matter. If you think the euro is going to retrace, we already retraced about 10 pips out of that new low. So we bounced about 18 pips out of the new lows on the 4-hour. So we already did that. So every currency's primed for that drama. This is the same hole. It's a 20 pip window. And surely any idiot could place limits every 3 pips on that. A 10K every 3 pips. Okay, now we're waiting for the next 2 minutes to go by. So I don't see why ICT doesn't just, he's going to mentor people. Look, dude, you didn't place your fucking orders. I mean, is that what the mentorship program? You're paying for him to go, dude, you're a fucking idiot. Right? How about the insult hotline? Anybody ever dial that? Fuck you. There's a bag of insults too. Don't forget that. It's the first robot little thing. Yeah. You gotta just trade bigger, dude. It's not boring if you trade big. This is a good spread. Look at this, 7 pip, 7/10 of a pip. Look at this beautiful trade. Look at all these bullshit. This is the worst currency to trade. It barely moves and the spread. You can't really 1 pip spread and it's barely moving. Look at this shit today. When the British, I think this is bad spread from the broker. I think that's not a real price. Look at the dollar CAD. Look at this crush. Take out the new lows here. You got your stop here. You're buying every pip on a 10K? Come on. Didn't hit my exact entry. Dude, you're in prison. Don't worry about it. Look at 15 pip window. Come on. How could you miss that? Who's not selling up here? Well, I have to wait to see what my RSI says. Okay. I guess, right? Coming back to 20. Look at this. All the way back to 20. It's just price. Doesn't matter. RSI don't matter. Every 5 minutes you're buying this thing. It's dripping down. Okay. I'm waiting 10 seconds to pull the trigger. You understand, man. I'm a sniper. So, yeah. All the way back to 20. So if you were a trend trader, you would have sold every rally and you got like, here's your only sell. Who's waiting for overbought, oversold? You got time for that shit? Dude, this is overbought. Just went up. Doji. Put on a hedge. It's overbought. Sell. Here comes the... Right? Trend traders are selling that. Right? They're selling that. Well, we're trend traders. We sell that. We sell every rally in a downtrend. That's how we made this money. So we're going up this channel here. I bought every pullback there. Well, until it went down. And then they stopped me out. I'm waiting for another stop hunt here. I think we can go below 20. We're gonna go right below 20 now. So it is a downtrend. See, I'll buy below 20. The British pound's probably going up. Spread just got a little wide there. And they really got to hit this price here to crush everybody. This very... Right there, we got to start going below this. Okay, now we just got to wait. I got 2 minutes before I pull the trigger on another market order. So I only buy when it's going down. If I would have sold when it was going up here, I guess I'd be a trend trader. We're trend traders. Hit trend continuation right there, son. That's how we make all this money. What is the target on that? Where the trend traders going to get off and go the other way? Look at this. Look at these severe wick zones here. Hey, we're going crushing down. Going to 20. 20 and below. So this goes. This could go on for another. I think top of the hour by 9:30. We could be getting filled below the 20-yard line. It's straight down on the 15. It's literally straight down on the 15. No. Straight down on the 15. Okay, we're touching 20 now. I got one. I'm going to start pulling the trigger here every 5 seconds until for the next minute. So I want to get in pretty heavy here. I don't know how long they're going to hold it. So it just bounced off the 20. We're trying to make 5. Okay. have some stupid stops in there now. Confirmation orders 2 pips away on top for 15 minutes. Still looking for that last spike. The last psycho spike. I think I got this set to take profits right where I'll be buying more, actually. So I wouldn't buy now. I wouldn't chase it. In 5 minutes, the sellers will be coming in. The trend traders. Let's look how smooth that is on the 15. Literally no bulls. Straight down on the 15. So not as much trading on the 15. Pretty easy to see the trend line break. That's your first break, second. Now it's going down a channel. I don't know how long this will last, but probably go below 20, I say. A lot of momentum, so possible crush. So we're getting in on the clock, and we're getting in on the prices. I guess you're going to build your channel like this. It's your 5 minute. Still crushing it back. These are 8-hour tickets here, so I wouldn't do this if it was real money. You probably want to put your 1-hour tickets here, so you don't want to overfill it. It could totally crush down there. So you're underwater, and everything that you bought from here, or are you getting stopped out? Here's yesterday's lows. Here's so you could come in tomorrow's Wednesday, so you could be coming into here tomorrow. Even if there's a bounce here, you could still drive it down. Or this is too big of a smash down, and Wednesday we're not going to be able to get down here again. So this here, so almost 1.5 hours straight down. 3 marching soldiers in the if you're using the candlestick pattern system. It's a real classic drift down. So now the resistance, let's take with the 5 minute trend traders are going to try to sell this in the next minute. If it closes up, they'll try to sell that. They'll sell it for a move down. Or they're not going to wait. It's just going to crush down. So you're waiting 1 more minute. There's a double bottom at the 20 for the 1 minute traders, but for the 5 minute trend traders, they're supposed to sell here in 40 seconds. If they're going to stick to their trade plan, that is. you say that for free. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you know, he's scaling out of his trades and stuff. He's getting better. He learned everything from me. ICT. He cheated and watched me. It's so funny because I had death threats from people. And they said I was making fun of, I think they called him the fish or something. They had like a nickname for him. So I thought that was pretty funny. I don't know. I just watched the guy from the University of Pips, and I was like, wow, Pips University guy. With the I guess candlesticks trigger me. Too many relationships gone wrong. But yeah, the guys that are just trying to make 5 pips, man, that's a good trade. That's a satisfying trade. I think with a 10 pip stop, you should be able to make 5 pips. It's worse than break even. I mean, if you pull the trigger, actually, if you pull the trigger every 5 minutes. Now here's the 5-minute traders just sold. Technically speaking, that last 5-minute bar, so they just went short. All the robots did that. Yeah, nobody likes Asia. Huh? I find it to be very tranquil. It's a good place to trade really big. I like to load the wagon in Asia. It's easy. You can make a nice 5-10 pips here. No problemo. Okay. I'm just running really tight stops tonight. That's my whole system. Five pip stops. Okay, this somebody just cashed out there. The 1-minute traders just sold that bottom. So we went down the stairway. And I did a video like this years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. I sat there trading the Australian dollar like this, just talking about this fucking bullshit market. It's just so stupid. It's so dumb. I hate it. I hate that it's so stupid. I resent the market. Like, I resent that it has to go against me before it goes for me. I hate that it's trading, that's going against the rhythm I'm picking. I want to pick the pace, I suppose. And when it moves too fast, that's upsetting too. It's all upsetting. I'm upset by it. Disturbed by its cliche stuff. Yeah, I like Bitcoin there at 10,000. How about that shit? How about the stock market going in an uncharted waters in an upward spike? How about the wheels coming off the British pound? People are unraveling positions. Big people are getting in and out because it's the end of the year of just humongous positions. It's very obvious. There's no fucking way that the market is moving if it's not just monster auctions in a loop. A loop of fucking insane auctions. And there's a little baby auction within the auction. So I think I saw the NASDAQ go to new highs, but the British stock market's not making new highs. The currency's just too expensive, I suppose. Look at this. There's a buy right here. So I got filled on limits at the 20-yard line there. Double bottom. I think I'll buy 8K right now. So this one is going to cash out pretty quickly, whereas the same trade on the euro dollar is going to take forever to cash out. That's the 15-minute. Like I can see this going above that and just cashing out like no problem. So there's the 5-minute traders on the. So here's the 1-minute story now. Double top, right? This is twice the sellers came in there on the down staircase. So the question is the down channel still in force? And it's just right still in the 1-minute down channel. Of course, I bought all the way into that. I think on some wide ass, because I'm still in it. I'm in some gargantuan stop on that. So the 1-minute stairway to hell. Yeah, well, long term to me, I think it's 15 minutes. I think I'm a little too excited about scalping, I guess. So the 5-minute scalp. There's a 5-minute stairway. So that's right on the wicks. I built that on the 1-minute off a close, which is kind of like, so the 1-minute close is the 5-minute wicks. Sellers came in here, and then the buyers came in. If this closes up, the sellers are supposed to sell in 2 minutes. They're looking for it to go below the 20. Yeah, that spread's going to tighten up probably at the top of the hour maybe for a second. I never really watched the spread. I guess you get a spread alarm. I was going to set price alarms, but you know what? I'm just going to look at the chart. I did it for fun one time, and it starts, the bell goes off. Of course, if you have it set for every pip, then the bell's going to go off. So you won't even hear the bell after a while. The only problem with alarms is you don't. I can still hear a car alarm though. I can still identify a car alarm. Okay, so here comes the sellers trying to take it below 20. So they sold that one, and they're waiting to cash out below 20 now. They got 50 seconds to kind of take out this 20-yard line, I think. If I update that candle, that bar. Yeah, so it's definitely possible to, methodically trade one instrument, but I don't know. I just can't get my brain around this idea that I'm looking at the Australian dollar and then I'm going to look at another currency. I just don't. I mean, the spread sucks. You can't scalp it. It's like, I don't know. It's too much work, I think. Every time I look at, it's like having 20 girlfriends. It's just too much work. Look at these guys that are kissing all these women like an idiot. They can't even fucking hold that game together. You think you could do it though, right? Barnacle Bill, the sailor lifestyle. I don't know. So the sellers pulled the trigger. Trend traders pulled the trigger there. Stairway to hell, right? It's going to keep going. Goes on forever. They just sold that. Going below 20 now. Target. Plus you got a doji. Here comes the confirmation entry. Guys are going to put sell stops here. Confirming the downtrend move. They're looking to make 10 pips. They're looking to take out that. They want to go down to take out this wick here. I think this is the target. So is there enough momentum to smack it? I could spike it down there real quick. A lightning spike move. That's not unheard of. We've seen that a million times. Let's see here. So running a 12 pip stop. On the, okay, that's 6. On the deeper orders here. So here's a 12 pip stop. So I'd buy for the next 8 hours. That's only it. That's now there's a 10K right there. And then every 5 minutes, I'm going to pull the trigger. Here comes the confirmation, people. They got sell stops right here. They're going to get triggered. We're looking for a blast to... Right here, I'm going to stack up just a pile of orders. Confirmation, people. I'm actually going to buy from here all the way down below 20 now. So we got 2 minutes before we update the 5 minute. So there's 2K short. The bears are short 2K right now. And they put their stops here. Or the robot did it for them. So this will become a buy stop. And now if they stop hunting on the way up, this is where you'll be cashing out of your, hopefully cashing out of your buys. So I'm going to buy, I'm just going to buy a bunch here because I'm anticipating a break of that. So the ask line is right at the breakout point, right? So you want to buy at the top of the hour. You want to buy at the market if you're not already long, or you put a buy stop in here right now. So I'm going to do a confirmation 2 pips away, which seems really far away. But if we go rifling through that, it'll get picked up. So that'll be a late entry, but momentum's got to make money on that. But that very first one, I always make this a scalp, even though it's a shitty entry. I always make that a scalp. Okay, 5 seconds. We're either going to rip up or down here. It's kind of like the perfect walk down on the 15-minute stairway. Not a higher, not a it's a perfectly timed walk down, so to speak. I trade as heavy as the market. The market's telling me how heavy to trade it. So when the market walks down like that, if I'm gonna, if I think that, so I got buy limits at the 20-yard line, and so when the market's walking down, I'm like, okay, this looks like I actually got orders way super deep in case the market smashes down. And so I gauge the entry, and the market's kind of telling me what to do, really. It's really not up to me. When the market's smashing around, there's no fucking way I'm getting in big, because it's like, unless you've got a tactic for that, like, how tight a stop are you, like, how tight a stop are you going to run? Okay, if your broker's giving you 1 pip stop, imagine the broker's giving you a 2 pip spread, right? Like, cause just imagine the worst case scenario. You know, if you're gonna do scalping, ECN 0, half a pip to 0 spreads, and you got your finger on the trigger, and you're paying commissions. Okay, now at that point, you are on the 1-minute chart. You got the tick chart like this. Right? You got, this is your world. Okay? So there's 2 worlds to live in. You'd have to turn off all these other currencies so you could see a huge tick chart, and you'd be buying here, buy. Okay, you can't even. You would, when you see that spread tighten up, you're hitting the button like a crack whore. Okay, you just bought a 10K, or you just bought a 100K, but your exit's to make $30 on that one trigger pull. That one button's gonna make $30, dude. It's got a 10 pips. It's got a 1.5 pip stop, and it's looking to make 3.5 pips. And you got your finger on the trigger, and you just made $30. Now you just made 40. Now you just made $100. But the other buttons you press are only 5Ks. So you have a 80K button, whatever it is. But if the market's moving in 1/10 of a fucking pip, that means that if you could place 100K at different prices in a 10 pip window, with different exits on each ticket. So you could take a micro lots, and you can fit a standard lot of micro lots into a 10 pip window. It seems inconceivable, but it's true. And you could write that as a single drop. You could create the spacing. You could have a button that you press that does that. And each ticket has its own unique stop, its own unique exit. It's amazing. So everything from trading a 1K every 5 pips it drops, every 5 minutes, to, okay, I'm putting fucking psycho Harry orders in that have 8 to 3 pip stops, standard lots stacked up. I wrote this. You write that script. Now you're watching 100 tickets come in on a drop, a 1/10 of a pip apart, or you can't really write the limit drop like that. You'd have to drop that 10 times and just queue it up, but you probably wouldn't do that because that's stupid. But you could have a 10K that's dense. You could put a 40K in, that's 4 drops, and you just stretch this you scale the chart, and you can see that literally this is a tenth of a pip. You can't get any higher res of a drop. If I drop it here, it's going to jump to the next thing, right? I can't slice it any thinner than that. Now this is maximum scale, and now imagine, you're asking, how heavy are you trading? Think about it. Look at that fucking thing. I mean, the market drops. It's insane, right? What could happen? Shit. I gotta move my fucking exits here. I fucked up. Yeah, I'm trading real money on this. So, I'm looking to make 20 pips tonight. So, yeah, I guess I'm looking to make $400 in like an hour. And the thing is that, yeah, there's no way hell I'm going to trade that demo like my real money, because I'm sitting here bullshitting about the fucking market, going through all these fucking bullshit currencies like this. I'm not going to trade this fucking dollar CAD. You fucking nuts? It's a whole that you'd have to trade that across. That's all you would trade. I just can't imagine. People are like, oh, look at the dollar CAD. I'm like, for why? Look at this chick. Dude, she lives on fucking California. Look at her Facebook. Dude, you're killing me. I can't. So, I don't know. But, I know people like to fuck other things. Chicks from Canada are hot, but I don't think I want to trade the Canadian dollar. Yeah, I guess if that's all I did all day. You could have made 200 pips today. You could have did the same thing on the British pound. It's funny because they both did 100 pip moves. Look at that Canadian dollar move. I mean, you talk about fucking. It's like end of the year. It's like triple witching. They used to have the expirations on the. They still have it. It's like it's the end of the month. I mean, think about it. As my tequila buddy would say. Think about it, right? It's the end of the month. It's the end of the year. It's ridiculous. So, and I don't like it when the market's not doing what I want it to do, I think. That's the most annoying thing. Okay, sellers are getting out here. So, people are cashing out here. 5-minute traders just got their ass kicked. The 5-minute trend traders just got their nuts sheared off there. So, trends do come to an end. Look at this thing turn on the 5-minute bar. Look at this thing turn on a dime. So a lot of people cashed out. Now, if this is real money, I'd have to look at that and go, but since I got more than one account, right, I would have a scalp account. There's another thing. You got to have more than one account. If you're only trading one instrument, you got to have at least 3 accounts because you got to scalp and swing. Because you're never going to make it to the platform in time to put on that trade that you catch out of the corner of your eye if you're a guy that trades all day long. So you have an account ready for that purpose alone to just jump in and just nail it. All the scripts are set. You see it. Boom. Right. It's like you have to have a sidearm. Right. It's a war, right? The war room. And then you have your stupid fucking basket of orders sitting at a high probability stop hunt zone. And those are scalp. Those could be scalps too. Or you could have scalp and a swing blended in together each other. But it's not hard to put a 40K in. You have, say, 25% scalp, 25% is going to make 5 pips, 25% make 12 pips. And hopefully it's going to be like this beautiful, smooth thing where you're out of half the position when you're in really heavy because you need to get the fuck out of these, like, so trading heavy through the whole thing, you can't do that. You can't get in some optimal trade entry bullshit and ride this motherfucker through the whole, because there's going to be a dead cat bounce that's worth about $100 to $300 if you're trading super big. So why would it, what sense is it in? Now, it's not like I didn't look at this thing after it bounced today and go, you know what? This thing could retrace. But anybody with half a brain had to get the fuck out of this thing on this half-hour chart because it was done. There's divergence on the half-hour chart. As soon as this thing makes this high and then failure swing, you know that's divergence. Now sellers are coming in already again. Look at this. So, so the sellers just came back to town because they cashed out. Like I said, that 1 minute, that 5 minute chart, they cashed out. And they want to take it through the floor now. They sold into that. And any scalper worth his scalp, he's cashed out there too because he knew the sellers were going to come in there. Now you just be like, oh, well, how big did you just trade that? Yeah, so how big are you in? Of course, how big are you in these markets? That's a good question. Now, the market's kind of telling you how big to get in because it's saying, dude, I'm just sticking around in a 5-pip zone. I mean, you can make 5 pips off of me. But when it's swinging in an 80 pips thing, you're like, dude, step back, place your orders. Now you got to, if you're going to trade the exact same size in a swing trade mode, 80K swing trading, and you're getting in 9 pips apart on 80K, it's kind of hard to do. I mean, that means the market's got to move 800 pips, right? So it seems like insanity to throw in 1K's 10 pips apart, but you're not going to, the 100 pips is a 10K. Granted, the very first ticket is underwater by $10, right? And that whole script is going to cost you, if it explodes, it's still going to cost you like $80 or $60, right? Because very bottom order. If you use the master stop of 110 pips and you bought a 10K, 10 pips apart, and you just laid that fucker in there for all day long, or every 8 hours, right? And now, presupposing that you don't buy as it's coming down into these limits, you actually let that trade plan play out. Now, you could trade that on multiple currency pairs, but that means you got to look up every fucking currency pair and look for that pocket. You need to find the vacuum that you're expecting to crush into and retrace out of. You have to go hunt that. You'd have to queue all that shit up in advance. That's work. I mean, it's if you're going to watch the tick chart and go, oh yeah, dude, buy here, I can make four pips easy. And still got buy limits sitting below right now for the next hour or 2 hours right now. So I have exposure to getting filled for the next hour. And if you made enough money on this first break of the down box, and of course on the 15-minute, this is the doji at the bottom of the 20. The volatility is too big here to do any kind of breakout. Like, I wouldn't put a buy stop or a sell stop. I think you missed your buy stop entry and your sell stop entry 15 minutes ago. You had a 15-minute window there to put a buy stop and do confirmation trading. And they've trapped you possibly on your buy stop right now. And if you don't delete your sell stop, they're going to trap you there and whipsaw you or something. That's possible. So, a bunch of liability there. Less liability on the 5-minute, though. You've only got one window of entry here, and they filled you on the buy side. No fills. Here's a fill. If you configure this inverted hammer, this is where they trap the trend continuation traders were trapped on this new low. Huge smash up. Now you're waiting for the market to simmer down. the trend traders would wait for the market to quiet down, and their idea of the new trend is this now. But the thing is that on the 15, the sellers came in, so we're still in a down. We could still go below 20 and spike down there by the bottom of the hour. So there's still that possibility too. Big spike down coming. Because there's no doubt the sellers came in here at this thing. I just have to trade it minute by minute. Every 5 minutes, I suppose. So there's 5 minutes down hard. The bulls are going to buy that. They think this is the top bottom now on this, right? The Elliott wave, this is 1, 2, we're expecting 3. Or this is 3. If this is 1, 2, doji 3. A lot of people are going to get the fuck out here. This is when a bottom became a top on the 5 minute stairway. And we'll be scalping out of that. So I'm going to buy that. That's 10 minute pullback. And just above, and you could run super tight stops here, because you could have stops sitting here and here. But of course, the perverted thing is that you're going to buy there. You got to buy there. So what are you going to do? Well, that's why the size is constantly changing. The market's telling you how big to trade, because it's telling you when you can run tight stops. It's telling you when you can run. Now you have to be, you have to let them stop you out and go flat, and start buying the next monster vacuum. And you'd have to lay stuff in like this. So you got buy limits here, and your scalp account's going to get blown out, but your limit account's going to pick up limit banks in here that have scalps built into them and some intermediate targets. And of course, just, waiting every 15 minutes for the 15-minute broker to update. See, there's a top bottom on the 1 hour here. If you consider this top, right, so here's your top bottom on going back to earlier today. So that's a structure thing. Of course, on the for your 5 minute update, it's a completely different story. So that pivot comes in here. Now we're just waiting for the bottom of the hour to come. So you can go to the half-hour chart. That's see, there's no stop entries here. There's only one here. This is the only low true range, and market's telling you get in kind of heavy, but targets have to be small too. And here you have you just got trapped long here. Using that theory, even just stupid mechanical trading theory, you're trapped long right now because you're underwater. But this maybe is your criteria, right? You have a trade plan for this big a bar. Just before that, this was the premium entry. Based on that technique, small bar, buy stop, sell stop. A lot of money there. It's a lot of money in stupidity. Even here, this is a huge, based on the amount of breakout here. This little baby bar, this half hour of nonsense. To here, this guy. You got filled on the short side. They never stop hunted you. You could have added to your position here. I don't think I'd want to add on these guys. I'd feel like I was chasing it. Here's where you would get, so here you're in big, you know, you're only trying to make a few pips here. Here you definitely made some pips. But you'd also have to have your limit strategy running to capture that. So you couldn't rely on breakouts alone. You just wouldn't be able to survive these markets with breakouts alone. So you have to scalp it and then have the plunge orders in there. So you have dynamic risk. Because who doesn't want to make money off of this stupid turn at the 20-yard line? Nearly dead on here on the 1 hour. This bottom becomes a top just before it goes to hell. And of course, if you've got, you know, your scalp entries there, and you can see that they're going to go crushing after this. You know, there's a stop start at this wick all the way down. So you know that's pretty ripe. And they dip into that window, and the scalpers come in when they dip into that window. They pull it back to here, and here comes the confirmation people. So the people that sold on stops here, with a stop 20 pips away, they never got stopped out. But they could have come back and sold it at the market on the clock here after they got filled on their confirmation. So they could have added on the clock. So this top bottom needs to hold, otherwise we're going down another chunk. We're just going to rifle through this floor here. And the half hour is going to come to an end here. So at the moment, they kind of trapped the bulls there. So I like mechanical trading, I guess. It makes sense. Or at least I can see what a robot would think. I could pretty much probably outtrade the robot because I could have a unique button to press for each circumstance based on the volatility. I mean, it's just, I guess you have to really babysit the market to really scalp it. Because you would have to reload your gun. Say you bought this new low here. Well, the next retest there, you'd have to reload all those tickets. Like an hour later. You got to come back and refresh these limits because once they get filled and cashed out, like it's over. Now we're looking for a rally into the. We got to take out this wick here. So this is a pretty big wick. That's going to be a big deal. So ideally you're cashing out on the way to that breakout because what if they just clip that and pull it back? So what if that's the next trap? So the 5-minute robots are getting in here. They just got trapped here, short. And if it's a buy stop only bot, he's just about to get filled. Or I guess he got filled. If you put your buy order right at that bid because they ask has already hit it. So you're looking at the, you know, you had to overpay for that. That's why you had to buy it on the clock when it was down here. When they're stop hunting these people, you're buying at the market and you're actually paying this price. You can't get that price down there. but you're paying that price at the time. That's pretty good because you're up on the trade now, right? You overcome the spread. You can kind of maybe you take off 50% of your position up into here, and the rest you would let go. So if you're trading really big, you know, the rest is going to cash out here, and then you're out of the trade, right? You're done. There's plenty of chances to get back in on limits. It's not like they don't retest the market. This is the big thing is if you have a fear of missing out, if you don't like, trust me, they'll retest it. It's just insane. And the here was kind of like I'd say there was three. Well, anything below this close, I'm sure there's some really shallow retests in there. So if you don't believe that's true, just go to the 5-minute chart, zoom out, go to the 5-minute chart, and look at this. I mean, not only did you, if you chop off this part, you got in here, and then it came back again. It came back again. So this, you can see the 5-minute stairway. Now, the buy stop, the bears are going to get their stops triggered here. And the confirmation traders are getting filled on that. 15-minute robots are long, and so here's where you can literally see, I've seen this on Asia where they take it to here and then the sellers come in. See, they just, right there, you can just see somebody just took profits. So they got to hold it underneath here. And this is the first doji. So this little zigzag's a doji. That's the body. Got to cut through that. Then you got to blow out this. So you might be out of half the position by now, and the rest you're out as it comes into the clipping the trees. So we're going to try to make 20 pips, I guess. 10. The first 10. First we got to make the first 10. So I'm in like 2.5 standard lets. But I'm in other stuff, see? That's the problem. So I've done a lot of these videos where I'm in other stuff. And yeah, frankly, it's annoying. I mean, even on fake money. So if I look through here. See the British pound? I bought the British pound. So I'm going to get out of that because it's just fucking up the metrics here. See, that was a stupid-ass spy at the market thing. And you really had to buy here. Like, you really had to... When I was buying the other one, you would have loaded up here, which I didn't. You really got to... If you're a scalper, you got to be buying that new low, you know. And if you didn't put a limit there, you had plenty of time to put limits in on that. I guess there's a time to really trade huge and a time trying to trade tiny. And tiny I would trade if it was really on fire and I didn't want to risk this idea of 2% of your account. I think you could really, you know, it depends how tight your stop is. The ever-changing dynamic risk. See, this entry is based upon a stop hunt that goes back on the 15-minute chart here, where you would have just big ass orders right here. So you don't have to sit here and babysit this bullshit. Now we're waiting for the bottom of the hour to bring the hammer down for a possible bust through. Now sellers just came into that window there. So the bid just backed off through that. So we should be getting out here on something. Now if you didn't write a take profit that's that shallow, then you'd have to dump the whole thing and hold the underwater tickets as your like you'd have to get out of okay, so I got some stuff here that's pending. That's not like I said, it's too much to fuck with. So the sellers just came in here to the you probably see a double top on the 1 minute there. Just see a single top. The buyers might be buying right here. So breakout pullback. The 1 minute confirmation, people would be buying at the market right now because they got their pullback, which is that just nothing more than that wick. So yeah, if you're trading with super tight spreads, dude, yeah, you're trading this 1 minute chart. You just bought that pullback confirmation. So I'm holding on my swing account right now. So on my swing account, I'm going to move up my targets. Try to make maybe 30 pips. So the first 10 there, see the sellers just came in there. So hopefully we're scalping out of something here. So here comes the bottom of the hour is come and gone. Oh, they're going to smash it down, looks like. So imagine you got out of stuff. Now you're going to just keep buying again. So you're just going to do the same trade. This is when trading's boring. Do the same trade over and over again. You know, I got some tight stops here. Here's a 4K with 8 pip stops. Eight to make 16. Okay, buy at the market here. 1 minute. Got a double bottom on the 1 minute, the breakout point. Sellers are coming in. So all this is all more stuff I'm going to buy. So when you look at this on the 1 minute, you're like, I don't think I'm going to get it filled. You look at it here, you're like, holy shit. I mean, perspective really matters. Because if you put orders like this, people will be like, really? Well, you're buying at the market. Fuck, what could be worse, right? Compare this to buying at the market. This is much better, right? I mean, who doesn't want to buy this pullback? So the sellers came in dead on that wick. This is turned on a dime here earlier. So you're waiting for the 1 minute to resolve. Now you can hardly see it unless you're like this. So the spread looks pretty wide here. Only because I'm zoomed in. So this is the body of that 15-minute doji, which is the floor on the 5 minute. So it's pretty precise, especially if you got like near zero spreads with commissions. I mean, you're trading super big. You can't afford to trade that big if your broker's giving you a shitty spread, because, you know, I mean, you're just going to look at the 4-hour charts and be like, okay, I waited 3 days. I waited a week to get in that. It seemed like you waited a week to get in that trade. Okay. So we got 45 seconds left. Got to break out this 1 hour, this 4 minute ledge. So we got a top becoming a bottom. on the 1 minute. We could still stop hunt below here, but the breakout is the bid takes this out and there's follow through the upside in 15 seconds. Because we'll be updating the 5-minute chart next. So we have a 4-minute chart essentially there. Now we got to get a nice response here and cut through this and just go screaming up, really. Otherwise we're fucked. I mean, if you're a bull. See, they just trapped everybody. Consider yourself trapped. That's why I always want to buy before this break. And even at that, it's disturbing. I should get rid of some of these symbols because then I can get a bigger tick chart going. There's only so much buffer for a tick chart, so if you're scalping, you're not going to be able to scalp all these currencies. See, every tick chart's, well, this is a bigger tick chart. But for some reason, maybe because it's Asia, there's more yen trading. Getting a shitty tick chart out of the euro. So we got to get this to cut through this bid pretty hard here. Got to cut that. So they just trapped everybody again on that 1 minute chart. So here's the real trap: is they just made a they just took out this wick here. Uh-oh. I don't know if they're going to be able to, the sellers may be stop hunted here. It'd be pretty tough to sell that. Although, this is where the sellers should be coming in here at the floor. There is quite a fight here, actually. They've trapped people here, no doubt. Got to get some resolve to this move here. Did you short Bitcoin at 10K? Do you have a 1 minute EA? I think a 5-minute EA would work, and my criteria, this is, if you know how to build an EA, here's my trade plan, is that you have an EA that runs with a 3-pip stop, one that runs with a 2-pip, one that runs with a 4, one that runs with a 5 and a 6. You have 3 EAs. And the only criteria is that when it sees a really small bar like this, it just puts a buy stop and a sell stop there. So it would have got in here. Actually, the 3 robots would have got in here. You have 10 robots. You have a 10 pip stop. You have a 10 pip bar bot. And so you also have like a 2 pip bar bot. But he's going to take his 5 pips and be done with it. And then you have a robot that's going to get in on this. He gets trapped here. But actually, when the bar is small like this, you have now this is how you have to terrace them out. Now you'd have to set the robots up and go, okay, when the account gets more money in it, not only is the 2-pip bot going to come in on a 2-pip bar, but the 4 and the 3 and the 5, those guys are going to come in, because on the 15-minute chart, that it's this is a trigger for the 15-minute bot, or the 15-minute. We have a 15-minute bot and a 5-minute bot, because he would take this trade, and he'd be up on this trade. He would have got filled on the long side, and he's up. But I think you'd still have to, maybe that robot's running in the background. But you're still going to have to trade this thing at the market on the clock. And I guess you could have a robot do that. It's small ATR heap, but the whole point of this robot stuff, the only way it's ever going to work is if the stop makes sense for the volatility of the last bar. The last 3 bars. Literally, you need a team of bots with... if you're going to try to make, say, 40 pips with a robot, that means that robot has to have a 10 pip stop to make 40 pips. But the robot's only triggered to run when that criteria is met. And that's all he would do. Well, you would never be able to make money like that because you need to have that 8 pip bot and the 9 pip bot and every bot in between bot. You have to. Okay, so we're challenging the floor here. And let's take a look at that 1 minute chart here to see what happened. So here we retested again. Go figure. We got a double bottom on the 1 minute. The confirmations traders pulled the trigger here. So they bought 1, 2, 3K. And the stop entry guys got filled here. If they had a trailing stop that started tightening up, another thing a robot would do is start tightening up. And here was the 4 minute. So here's how this story, this is no different than any other story in any other time frame. Resistance, breakout, trap the traders, come back, rape them, stop them out, right? And if we were on a different broker, if I was on a super ECN with, you might get a lower low here. On the other broker, it was a stop hunt. On this broker, it's a double bottom. Okay, I'm looking for like 20 pip rally here now. Now, if we can make it to the 20-yard line. Okay, so hopefully I just cashed out of something. Because here's the floor we're blowing through on the 5 minute. Next seller's window is going to be right here. It's also where that doji is. So definitely going to challenge the sellers that come in at this doji. That's critical. Exit. Okay, now we're looking for... now, if you're a swing trader, you have to hold this whole fucking thing. This is just a chance to really load up down here heavy at the 20. So I think you really have to have a scalp built in because we still got to get out of this box. So trapped in this monster box here. This whole thing. So got to get out of this purgatory. So we're right at the 50-yard line. Or we're right at the 50% of that box. And I guess if you go right here, this is kind of like. But actually, you're at the top half of this whole box here. But I'm just looking at the most recent. This is like a 4-hour chart, maybe. No, like it's more like a. So if you boxed off these bars, I wish there was one more. I had the screen running really big before. I wish I had one more layer of zoom in, but. That's about 4 hours. Shit, I can't resize that box. Can't see the fucking middle node here. Damn, this is fucking too many tickets on the screen. So, we'll just fucking redraw it. I'm going to say this is 4 hours. It's just completing 4 hours. Top half of that. Got to cut through this bar. Pop out the top. Make a severe run. All right, maybe make it to the 20-yard line. So I think a lot of people are going to cash out there. People just cashed out, actually, right there. Sellers just came in. The 15-minute guys just came in, right? Because here's the 15-minute exit. Right on the clock, too. That was 15 minutes into this doji. The swing traders are going to hold this. Now, if you scalped out, obviously you're going to put a buy limit here now. Because we could come back to retest this. So you'd start coming in like this with the limits again. And these could be scalps too. I mean, it's a bottomless pit of expression, basically. Okay, so we're waiting for some. Now, the big determiner is going to be 45 minutes from now because I don't know if it's Singapore, but something happened severely at 9:30. But the thing is, it's really about this 4-hour chart. If you look at the 4-hour chart, it's there's probably people that are still long from this stop on here. And you got to figure, well, look at the big picture here. It's quite a smash now. So I think that's very possible. We could go up another 10 pips maybe. Of course, that's going to not be in a straight line, I don't think. Kind of have to just cut through hard here. Serious, these half-hour robots just went long, I suppose, from a breakout strategy. Yeah, you'd have to have, you know, VPS, because I think your computer would choke, right? If you had like all these robots, besides, I've never run a virtual. Are you logging, when you have a virtual private network, do you log into a website? Are you looking at it through some app? Are you looking at is it like you're logging into a video of this thing running? I guess you could watch on a multi-terminal platform, you could watch the results real time. So I've never, they'll do it for free and stuff like that. But, yeah, you could do it. I mean, it's something that you'd probably want to do that. Like I said, the criteria would be so explicit for each robot would have its own. So you might even have, if you're on VPS, you might have like, right. And it's either going to be pure stop entry. That'd be easy. I mean, you could have a stop entry, and it's hard to pick direction though, because ultimately, non-directional is the ultimate, because it's going to do something you wouldn't do maybe, because you're going to have an idea of direction. So you could be wrong. It would trade against you in a way, but it would make money because it would stop and reverse and you wouldn't. So if you traded on top of your robot, so if you're trading and your robot's running in concert with you, kind of like bumpers, at the bowling alley, keep your ball from killing other people. Something like that, some stupid ass governor. I guess keep your engine from blowing up, right? The RPMs are set to X so you don't accidentally just throttle it to death. I got an account like this right now. I got it set to 20K. You can only put 20K in the, you can only have 20 open tickets. So it's really hard to blow the account up. even though leverage is 3,001, it's kind of hard because if you have, you're risking $20 if every script has a 10 pip stop. So you'd have to be wrong 20 times in a row. That's, plus, of course, you could do that over and over again. It's not like 20 trades a day. I mean, you fucking 20 trades every 15 minutes. You got 20K pending every 15 minutes, or you're in 20K every 15 minutes. Risking about $20, I suppose. But if your targets are set to 80, of course, you have to have your, on the, when the British pound was doing what it was doing today, if you had a 1 minute robot, he might not be able to get that trade on. I'm sure even a fixed pip broker, which I have, will not take the order if it's the moment you hit the button or the moment the robot says put a buy stop in and the market's already moved past that price. It's just going to get... You'd also need a robot that's going to not freeze. He's going to ignore... Like, see, these scripts are set right now, so if I hit the buy stop button and that broker's not going to take it, it's not going to loop it. But I guess you could have a robot that says, hey, just don't retry that order, because the other robot's going to come in anyways on top of it. And he's going to execute that thing. So, okay, now we're waiting for some type of follow through here. Coming at the top of the hour, we need to take out the high of the evening of the Asian session. Otherwise, we're kind of doomed as far as a retrace goes tonight to 1860. 1860's got a doji on the 15. It looks pretty clear to me on the 15. You go right here. So the body. That's just before everything collapsed too. Before the bottom dropped out. So if you bought here to here, conceivably you could make on a standard lot about, maybe $180. You'd have to take away some of the, spread but that's pretty ferocious pullback. See, sellers are coming in right now. You're right up against the floor on that. This is the doji body right now, so people are cashing out right there, I suppose. Question is, are you gonna be able to crush that through? Yeah, well, on the 1 minute chart, you just wouldn't be even. Yeah, thing is that you'd have to have that robot turned off. Like some robots, I did a test with ATR bots, and if they're turned off during they only come on certain times of day. Amazingly, they make money, kind of based on a breakout, and actually they make money if they don't overtrade. Even though they miss some good setups. So this is why people make money trading that understand money management. So the worst trader in the world, the worst entry trader in the world makes money if he waits long enough for that to become a profitable trade. Plus, if he doesn't, he has some type of exit plan to take a loss, God forbid. But it's funny because if you think everything from a 1K to pulling the trigger on, anybody watch this guy Hilton trade live money? You want to see something insane. No stops, no take profits. He's buying 40 standard lots on one trigger pull. He pulls the trigger twice. Boom, boom. I think he's probably trading in a quiet session. But if he was trading the British pound today, he would have just got killed. And I guess the idea of a mental stop to me is just, I could never have a mental stop because I'm just too mental, I think. I think I'd just freeze. I'd be like, wow. Or the account would just blow up. I'd be like, Oh, I think I just blew up the account. Oh, that's crazy. I didn't see that coming. Okay, we got to cut through this thing. We got the 5-minute traders are coming on now. So the 5-minute traders think this is an uptrend. So this is a stairway out, kind of a bad stairway because it really didn't kick in till here. There's a stairway out of the abyss. We got to cut through this. Not to mention turtle trading bot. Like a turtle bot is going to get in on new highs. See, now here I can already see that the 5 and 10-minute robot would have bought this, and they wouldn't have sold it. In other words, they got no fill on the sell side there. The buy side, they're long by default. They don't even see anything. So it's a blind bot. So that's the advantage the robot has to use, that you can see the structure the robot really couldn't see. I don't think there's a structure bot out there yet because it's just too I don't know. I guess discretionary. You're really looking at this thing in the big picture. Okay, we gotta overcome this. Otherwise we're doomed. I don't think the sellers are gonna come in there though. So the 5-minute traders are just, they gotta cut these wicks off. A lot of selling pressure up here. Or the guy at the Pips University would say, University of Pips, there's a lot of supply and demand up here. A lot of supply and demand up there. Yeah. Wow. 1 week. So 1 week snapshot of performance. Yeah, I wonder. I never really ever have tested anything on any kind of like, I've never back tested anything. I just start like driving the car, I think. Oh, look, there's a steering wheel. Okay, let's go. Well, it looks like sellers are going to come in right here now. Or people are cashing out. So you just need enough velocity to kick it through the goalposts of life here. See, British pound is just not doing anything. See, that was your buy. You have to wait for this thing to make money. This currency, oh my God. I'm buying this on limits. Right? So if I was going to swing trade that, it'd be like this. Yeah, we'll buy it on a pullback. All night long. I'd buy it here for next 8 hours. Because if I was going to sell that, I missed my sell. Like here's your sell bot got in here. Or your breakout bot. Dollar CAD's going to tank. Dollar Swiss is going to tank. So I'd buy this while I was sleeping. Here we go. We're making a run for the border, man. Call Trump. Let's see if we get over the wall. Coming into the splash zone there. Yeah, love to see it overshoot the runway. Come all the way up here and cut the top of this wick right here. Bam. But it's just too dreamy. It's gonna be just a complete bullshit thing where it goes up here, sellers come in, and I don't know. It is crazy. I mean, it's a wild. the end of the month here. This Friday is the first day of the month. Amazing. It's amazing timing. Let's see what kind of drama we get here. Got 5 seconds. It's a smack up and down now. Everybody's on to that. We're cutting through this floor here. Got to hit it hard there. Looks like a creeper gear move. So 1 minute traders have all this wonderful there was a stop hunt on the 1 minute, or they pull back to the doji here. Still marching north. Here's another stop hunt. It's coming up on that critical window here. Got a double wicks here you got to cut through. It's going to take forever. Here we go. People just cashed out right there. I should pull back off of that. At least for a few pips. Well, there you go. 1 minute chart. Oh boy. Get her done. That didn't last long. Sellers got clobbered. Good for them. It's about time. How dare they? Can't they see it's an uptrend? Okay, I'm going to move up my targets. So 20. That's 20 pips. $200 on a standard lot if you had no spread. And I'm not paying attention. I guess I'm cashing out. I'm up 170 bucks. I can't tell if I'm getting filled in. Oh, see, wait. See, I got this dollar yen trade that's making money. Let me get out of that. I guess I just bought this bounce here. That should be tanking, I guess, if using the dollar theory. This is still tanking. So that would be a good buy tonight for a pullback. I think I'm only in this. This should be a good buy if the euro goes up. All right, we're right at the borderline. We're at the Trump wall. Testing the new Trump walls here. Should see the sellers come in now. Anything above there, premium cash out zone. Man, she's just cutting through. She's pissed. All right. Wow, right at the edge. Look at that. Sellers came in right at the tip. It's a pretty decent broker. I think most brokers have the same bid. Pretty close. Here's a 5-minute chart. A lot of people buy right here. Right at the breakout. A little late for me. I'd feel like an idiot buying here. I'd get trapped probably, my luck. You're looking at this view. I mean, geez, all you gotta do is go here and you'd be like, oh yeah, fucking A. Look at this thing on the 1 hour chart, come on. Holy God. Like, here's your target for well beyond 20 pips, so that's your 30 pip target. Okay, so that's gonna be at the 80s. But yeah, it's boring. Gotta trip this right there. So they trap people, I suppose, right here. You can see by a tenth of a pip, they've already trapped people right there. It's probably the top of, so top of the 4 hour chart right there. A lot of sellers coming in there. So at this point, I could cash out of everything, and I don't think I've got but 4K that I'm underwater on, though. So if you're a swing trader, you're gonna have to you have to endure a pullback now, possibly. Looking at the 4 hour ride all the way into that window. Here comes the sellers. See how far they can pull it back. So if you're going to add to it, you got to assume here's a good place to put a buy limit. Even all the way back here. All the way. All 3 pips. I'd assume, right? All 3 pips of waiting there. Of room. Come back. But that was a nice, I was still stuck in the box here. Never got out of that. Almost 10, it's like 11 pips. 11.5 pips there. So we could add here with limits. If you're really bullish, you're just going to put limits all the way back here all over again. So that's a good place to add. Unless you bet the ranch and you can't afford to add, which is a high probability. Okay. Okay, let's see how much I can. So just going to, yeah. So I have to wait this one out. Right at the borderline here. see how much selling comes in here. Got 10 seconds before we update that 5-minute bar. Confirmation people would come in here on this 5-minute bar, but yeah, might have to come back some more. Might be ahead of itself. So I'm just going to buy here. Buy about 20K. See what happens. Yeah, it's pretty boring. Waiting for the London Open now. That's only about, what, 5 hours away. So, waiting for the 5-minute traders to decide what to do.
In the middle, we have some descriptions as to how we would like the cell to be laid out geometrically. You see, we would like the two inputs on the left side, the carry-in on the bottom, the carry-out on the top, and the output on the right side. The input equations first have to be processed so that they can be more easily represented in silicon. This process is very similar to recognizing common subexpressions in the input of a compiler. Input language, the Boolean equations, are read and processed by a program called YAC, which was originally developed to help us build compilers, but has in fact been used in a large number of application programs as well. YAC is based on the theory of LA-LR1 parsing. It builds a small finite state machine which is able to control the actions of the program which reads the input, detect errors accurately, and structure the input in such a way that the program can then go ahead and perform its operations on it. After these equations have been processed, it's then necessary to worry about the geometric layout of the circuit. This is done in the next two portions of LGen. The first program worries about the ordering of these columns. It uses a technique called graph partitioning to attempt to iteratively come up with a good solution to what is in fact an extremely difficult problem in theory. After the columns have been ordered, then the tracks where the signals run are laid out as well by another program. And finally, in some sense, we now have the circuit designed, and it's simply a question of realizing it with the particular rules for our fabrication process. And that is done by a fourth program. So once again, we have an example of taking a very complex problem, dividing it into pieces, representing each piece with a separate program, and then using the facilities of the Unix system to glue the pieces together into a coherent whole again.
Computing is going to be more and more interwoven with people's lives as the years go by. So computer technology is going to have to evolve to be easier for people to use. The Unix system is not the end of the road in this regard, but I think it's a good step along the way. The usual way to get a large computer application developed involves a big team of people working in close coordination. Most of the time this works surprisingly well, but it does have its problems. And large projects tend to get done poorly. They take a long time, they consume an astonishing amount of money, and in many cases the individual team members are dissatisfied. So everybody in the computing business is constantly searching for ways to do a better job of developing computer applications. There aren't likely to be any final answers, both because the problems are hard and because as we find solutions, we try even more ambitious objectives. But there are some things that can be done to make life easier for everybody on a large programming project. A good programming environment helps a lot. And in the next few minutes, we're going to show you some of the properties of the Unix operating system that make it a good programming environment for many purposes.
In Bell Labs, as in many industries, almost everyone has some kind of involvement with software. Either they are actually producing software, and that is their job, or they are impacted by software, or they use software. In fact, at Bell Labs, about 50% of the people are actually producing software, and everyone else has some kind of involvement with it. In fact, that's one of our worst problems today. There is a crying need for useful software to do effective jobs. We just do not have enough people to write all of that software. Keeping large amounts of software working and keeping it working in the face of change is a big job. It takes a lot of skilled people to do this. Now, software is different from hardware. When you build hardware and send it out, you may have to fix it because it breaks, but you don't demand, for example, that your radio suddenly turn into a television. And you don't demand that a piece of hardware suddenly do a completely different function. But people do that of software all of the time. There's a continual demand for changes, enhancements, new features that people find necessary once they get used to a system. In other words, we put the system out there, people get used to it, their jobs change, they come back with more demands for different sorts of features in the system. The result is there's no way to get perfect requirements in the first place, and that means that we have to build the software to be very change tolerant, because we do not want to throw the software away the year after we wrote it. There are a couple ways to do that. One is to make the software fairly clear and easy to read and understand and change, and you do that with some of the current popular structured programming techniques. Another way is to write many, many small modules of code. That way, when you have a change, perhaps you only throw out a few small modules or make changes in a few modules rather than in thousands and thousands of lines of code. What we should be doing in the computing business is trying to raise the level at which we work so that a programmer can write a few lines of code that turn into many, many instructions in the machine. That way, when changes need to be made, one just changes a few lines of code rather than thousands and thousands of them.
In the mythical man month, Fred Brooks estimates that it took 5,000 staff years of effort to produce the operating system for IBM's 360 series computers. Clearly, nobody is going to do that sort of thing very often, certainly not for every new type of hardware or for every new class of application.
Someone once said that software stands between the user and the machine, and to me this conveys this picture of a great wall of software up there that you have to overcome to get anything done. There's certainly a grain of truth in the remark anyway. If you stop to look, many operating systems seem to spend a substantial fraction of their time and effort not in helping you, but in impeding you, in making your job difficult, sort of providing obstacles to be overcome.
When Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie started building the Unix system in 1969, they found a structure which simplified many aspects of the interactions between computers and people. Thompson and Ritchie were aiming to keep their system simple, and they found a collection of primitives that enabled them to do a great deal with a very few primitives.
A Unix system is made up sort of 3 layers, if you like. The central layer, the kernel, is the thing that controls the resources of the machine. Then wrapped around that, at least conceptually, is something called the shell, which is the interface between most users and the kernel part. It sits there and waits for you to type commands at it, and then it interprets them. And then around that is sort of yet another layer are useful programs, things like editors and compilers for programming languages and document formatting programs and programs that you write yourself. And what you can do is to think of these Unix system programs basically as, in some sense, the building blocks with which you can create things. And the thing that distinguishes Unix system from many other systems is the degree to which those building blocks can be glued together in a variety of different ways, not just obvious ways, but in many cases very unobvious ways, to get different jobs done. The system is very flexible in that respect. I think the notion of pipelining is the fundamental contribution. If the system is, you can take a bunch of programs, 2 or more programs, and stick them together end to end so that the data simply flows from the one on the left to the one on the right. And the system itself looks after all of the connections, all of the synchronization, making sure that the data goes from the one into the other. The programs themselves don't know anything about the connection. As far as they're concerned, they're just talking to the terminal. Now let me give you an example of how this works in practice. The system, as I mentioned, is used a lot for document preparation kinds of things. Programs for helping you type letters or produce technical papers or write books. In all of those things, of course, people, when they're typing at the machine, make spelling mistakes. So let's see how we could use some of these building block notions in practice to help you develop a program for finding spelling mistakes. Suppose I take a sentence. This is a sentence which is in a paper that John Massey and I wrote some years ago now. If you look at it carefully, you'll see that there are actually a couple of spelling mistakes in there. Now, suppose that we wanted to find the spelling mistakes using a machine. How would we do that? Well, basically what we would do, the simplest thing I can think of, is to split the sentence there into words, individual words, and then compare the words against a dictionary. And every time we find a word which is in that sentence but not in a dictionary, it's at least a plausible contender for being a spelling mistake. Now, how do we do that? What I want to show is that you can do that using just existing Unix programs, just gluing them together to get the job done. Suppose that we say, first we'll take a program called MakeWords, and we'll run that on the sentence. Now what that does is to break the thing up into 1 word per line. Now I'll take the output and I'll pipe it into another program which will simply convert it into lowercase. The reason I want to convert it into lowercase is that my dictionary doesn't have any capitalizations, and so words like Bell and Unix, which are capitalized here, would show up as spelling mistakes unless I did this. Now, the next thing that I want to do, my dictionary is in fact sorted in alphabetical order as dictionaries are, and so it's a lot easier for me to compare the words of my document to the words in the dictionary if they're sorted, so I'm going to run them into sort. And finally, if you look at it carefully, it doesn't show up very easily here, but there is a duplicate word there. Systems appears twice, and in a real document, words like THE would show up many times, so we'd like to get rid of duplicates. So let's throw that through another program called Unique. So what we've got so far is we've got the words of my document, in this case the sentence, 1 word per line, in lowercase, neatly sorted, and all of the duplicate words thrown away, so there's only 1 word, 1 instance of each different word. And then what I'm going to do is run it into one last program called Mismatch, which will simply print all of the words that came down this pipeline and print out the ones that were in the document that weren't in the dictionary. So what we have here is 5 separate programs cooperating to do this job. And in one giant pipeline. Now, if you look at the list that came out, you'll see that indeed we got laboratories and provide, which were our two spelling mistakes. And of course, we got two other words as well, and this tells you not only what's good about the approach, but also what's bad about it. Time sharing is not a spelling mistake, but it's a perfectly fine example of technical jargon, the sort of thing that means something to everybody in the computer business. It means nothing whatsoever to people who are not computer types. And the word Unix is a fine example of something that's not going to be found in a normal dictionary. So, what do? First, we take the misspelled words and we go back to the original document and we correct them so we don't have any spelling mistakes. Secondly, we take the words that, like time sharing and Unix, that are not spelling mistakes but which showed up here, and we put them back into our dictionary so that the next time somebody has a document that contains Unix or time sharing, they don't show up as spelling mistakes. So we've not only done our own job, but we've improved the tool that we're using in the process. So you notice that I did that whole job without writing any programs at all. The whole thing is cobbled together out of programs that already existed, and all I did was to use the fact that the system provides this mechanism of the pipeline so that I can take programs and stick them together one after another to get my job done. And I think this is one of the reasons why the system's so productive, that there's a large collection of things that people have already built that we use, and as we build our new things, then they become part of the repertoire of things that people subsequently can build on.
During the last decade, we have discovered a number of new, powerful pattern matching algorithms that are useful for locating patterns in text. Many of these algorithms have been developed using insights obtained from theory, obtained by studying automata and language theory. As our knowledge of pattern matching algorithms increases, we can very quickly take this knowledge and package it in the form of Unix programs. And we can spread these Unix programs to the entire community very quickly.
Unix systems has many features which make it easier for the programmer to write programs. These include formatless files, the hierarchical directory structure, the ability to pipeline the output of one command as the input of another, device-independent I/O. All of these things make programming considerably easier than on most other systems.
The heart of the system is really the file system, the ability to store information for extended periods of time. And one of the reasons the system works as well as it does is that the file system is well designed. And many systems, you have to say an awful lot about a file before you can do anything with it. You have to say where it is and how big it is and what kind of information that's going to be in it. All kinds of things that are basically utterly, completely irrelevant. Here, you don't have to do any of that. A file is as big as it is. It doesn't matter where it is as long as you know what it's called. And so you basically don't have to think of any of those complexities that you have in other systems. When you want information in a file, you put it there. When you want it back, you get it out again, and you don't have to think about size or number of records or number of fields or anything like that unless it's really germane to your program. For most purposes, it's utterly irrelevant.
A file is simply a sequence of bytes. Its main attribute is its size. By contrast, in more conventional systems, file has a dozen or so attributes. To specify or create a file, it takes endless amounts of chit-chat. If you want a Unix system file, you simply ask for a file, and you can use it interchangeably wherever you want a file.
The Unix system consists of a hierarchy of directories, which a directory is simply a file that contains the names of either other directories or files. And this whole thing goes on recursively. When you log into a Unix system, you normally are sitting in a place that's called your home directory or your user's directory. And I can say pwd, which means print the name of my working directory, and it'll tell me where I am. It says at the moment that I'm in user bwk. And that's where I start when I log in. Now, I can go up a level in that. I can change to parent level. And now, if I print my working directory, I'm in /user. And I can go up one more level to the root of the whole file system. Let me go back down to bwk, and I can list the files that I have in that directory. And I find there, among other things, a directory called TV. And I can list the files that are there, and I'll find, among other things, the sentence that we printed in the spelling mistake finding program. Let me look at that, and sure enough, there it is. So as you can see, the file system hierarchy makes it possible for users to organize information into its natural grouping and to go up or down and find things quickly and easily. The Unix system interface for most people is through a program called the shell, or the command interpreter. And basically, it's simply a program that watches what you type and treats it as requests to run particular programs. Now, there's nothing magic about running programs. The programs that you run are actually just the names of files in the file system. The shell searches in the file system in a particular way to find a file whose name is the name of the program that you think you're running, and it goes and executes it. And in fact, it's not possible for you as a user, just by executing a program, to tell how that particular program has been implemented. For example, it might have been written in a language like Fortran or C, or it may have in fact been written as something like the spell program that we talked about earlier, which is a combination of other programs stuck together with pipes or some similar thing, and all put in a single file as a shell sequence, or sequence of commands.
What Brian did earlier was he typed all the commands, the 5 program names, for his spelling checker on one line using the pipeline facilities. Now that's nice, except that you may want to check documents often, and you don't want to have to type that long sequence of commands. So it's possible to put all of these commands in a file and tell the shell, when I type the name of that file, I want you to execute the commands that are inside that file. Now, let me show you an example of this. We have a program called Spline, which fits curves to a set of data points, and I've got a set of 5 data points that we're going to see what the curve looks like. I'm going to run Spline through a program that turns this into graphics called Graph, and I'm going to run that through a special program that turns the graphic language into something specific for this terminal. I only need to type plot and data, because inside the file plot is this string of commands. And here is the result of plotting those 5 data points on this particular terminal. The ability to put commands in files and only have to type the file name to get these commands executed makes the computing business a lot easier. Often you're doing things that are repetitive and you don't want to have to type long lists of things. This makes our life much easier and allows us to tailor our environment for the way we want to work.
Another nice feature of the Unix programming environment is the concept of input-output redirection. Normally, when you type a command, the output from it goes to your terminal, and the input comes from your keyboard. However, the shell can be told by a simple notation that when you run a program, you wish the output to be directed into a file, or that the input be taken from a file.
For example, to print the output of my spelling program on the line printer instead of putting it on my terminal, all I have to do is say myspell sentence greater than device line printer rather than myspell sentence. And the output goes into a file, what looks like a file, except that it's actually a file that causes the line printer to spring into action and print my 3 or 4 spelling mistakes on the line printer. On many systems, redirection of input and output is literally impossible because the programs have wired into them the notion that they have to read or write the user's terminal, and there's simply no way to convince them otherwise. They have to do that. Here, that is not the case. Here, any program can have its input or output redirected because the input and output redirection is handled not by the individual program, but by the shell. And so that way it applies to all programs without any exception at all. And in fact, this goes a little further than you might expect, because not only are parts of the disk files as they are in other systems, but in addition, the I/O devices, the peripheral devices connected to the computer, are also files in the file system. For example, the line printer and the tape drive and even the thing that dials telephone numbers are all devices in the file system. And the same program that will copy information from one disk file to another disk file will also copy information from a disk file to the line printer or from the magnetic tape drive to the printer. The same program, exactly.
A good operating system is easiest for a programmer to use if the programming language fits with the style of the system. So along the way in the course of the Unix system's development, Dennis Ritchie created the C language.
C is a very nice high-level language with many of the modern programming constructs in it. The thing that's very important about it is that it lets you avoid the details of the machine when you want to, but when you need to, and sometimes when you're writing an operating system, you really do need to, you can get at the details of the machine and control everything. But you're not forced to do that, and that's important because that means you can write operating systems in this language and still have something that can be portable to other machines. The Unix system has been moved to many, many different kinds of computers. Again, that means that people can ignore the details of what a machine is underneath and get on with their job. Now, so at that level, C is by far the favored language. At the next level, the shell programming language is very popular. In fact, on some machines, people find that the shell meets all of their programming needs. They are writing lots of procedures to help them manage their work. They don't even have to go to a language at the level of C. As it happens, though, because the system is such a pleasant programming environment, programmers all over the world have imported or added their own languages. So, for instance, you can find Fortran, Algol, Lisp, BASIC. In fact, almost any language you can think of exists on some Unix system somewhere.
What's important about the Unix system is not so much what Ritchie and Thompson put into it as what they were able to leave out of it. Rather than produce a large number of primitives, each one complex, they were able to choose a small number of simple primitives which could be fitted naturally together to accomplish complex tasks. This structure of the operating system makes it natural and easy for people who create applications to produce applications in that same style. For example, as the scale of integration of silicon circuits gets ever larger, we find it necessary to have more and more sophisticated design aids to help people create large-scale integrated circuits. Our existing design aids are advanced and effective, but advances in VLSI create a need for even better tools. Rather than produce those tools in the form of one humongous program designed to do everything, the people here have been producing small packages, each designed to do some individual function that's helpful in the design of integrated circuits. Then these individual packages can be combined using shell procedures to design a part of a circuit or a circuit, and the parts of a circuit can be combined to make a whole circuit. Steve Johnson is one of the people who has been involved in this effort. He is currently working on a program called LGen, which takes Boolean equations as input and produces logic circuit designs as output.
Because tool building is such a way of life on the Unix system, over the years we've developed tools that actually help us make other tools. These involve things like parser generators, lexical analyzer generators, and other programs that help us organize and develop tools. These tools have been used in the development of LGen and many other applications. Here we see the Boolean equations for a simple adder. Down here we have the equations for the carry out and the sum. In the middle we have some descriptions as to how we would like the cell to be laid out geometrically. You see we would like the two inputs on the left side, the carry in on the bottom, the carry out on the top, and the output on the right side. The input equations first have to be processed so that they can be more easily represented in silicon. This process is very similar to recognizing common subexpressions in the input of a compiler. Input language, the Boolean equations, are read and processed by a program called YAC, which was originally developed to help us build compilers, but has in fact been used in a large number of application programs as well. YAC is based on the theory of LA-LR of 1 parsing. It builds a small finite state machine which is able to control the actions of the program which reads the input. detect errors accurately and structure the input in such a way that the program can then go ahead and perform its operations on it. After these equations have been processed, it's then necessary to worry about the geometric layout of the circuit. This is done in the next two portions of LGen. The first program worries about the ordering of these columns. It uses a technique called graph partitioning to attempt to iteratively come up with a good solution to what is in fact an extremely difficult problem in theory. After the columns have been ordered, then the tracks where the signals run are laid out as well by another program. And finally, in some sense, we now have the circuit designed, and it's simply a question of realizing it with the particular rules for our fabrication process. And that is done by a fourth program. So once again, we have an example of taking a very complex problem, dividing it into pieces, representing each piece with a separate program, and then using the facilities of the Unix system to glue the pieces together into a coherent whole again.
Computing is going to be more and more interwoven with people's lives as the years go by. So computer technology is going to have to evolve to be easier for people to use. The Unix system is not the end of the road in this regard, but I think it's a good step along the way.
Thank you very much. I can't tell whether this something closer than 1 AU away there. I don't know where you folks can hear me. Let's assume you probably can. And no, it sounds like we're getting another blast. I pushed it. It says it's on. If all else fails, check the power. Okay, so I'm going to assume if in the back row you can't hear me at all, you know, wave your arms or something like that, and we'll just assume it's okay. Alrighty, so let's get started. This title here, it actually has a bit of a history in some sense. It's obviously pretty arrogant and impolite in some sense. It's actually a title that I used in a talk in 1973, which you may think of as a long time ago, before practically everybody here was born. And I was much younger in those days and had slightly different hair. The genesis of the whole thing, and in fact what I want to talk about today, when I went to Bell Labs in 1969, I happened to be lucky enough to have the office next door to Dick Hamming. Anyway, as I said, I was in the office next door to Dick Hamming. Dick Hamming was arrogant and irascible and very, very smart, and he used to spend a lot of time complaining about how people programmed. And he used to say to me and many others, hey kid, the way we teach programming is that we give you a dictionary, we give you a grammar, and we say, you're a great writer. And that's nonsense. It doesn't work that way. And one day Dick came into my office carrying a book. Literally, this book, a book called Computer Applications of Numerical Methods. I will not give you the author's name. And he opened the book, showed me a particular page, and he said, look at this is terrible. And I looked at the book, and I said, my God, this is terrible. He was looking at the numerical analysis. I was looking at the code in this book. It was a Fortran numerical analysis book. So let me show you the code that I saw in that book. Okay? And in fact, I'll ask you the question, what does it do? It's Fortran. Many of you, I suspect all of you, are at least familiar with Fortran, if not real whiz-bang experts. I'm no longer a whiz-bang Fortran expert either. What's it do? Come on, there's no excuse. This is Fortran as it was in 1958, right? It's not that complicated. So what's it do? Remember that I and j are integers, right? So we're getting closer. It's not a unit vector, but you have the right idea. When I is less than j, that term is 0, right? When j is less than I, that term is 0. However, when I equals j, the term is 1. Okay, so what this is doing is creating an identity matrix, right? It's putting ones down the diagonal of the matrix. Kind of clever. And, you know, I got a room full of really bright people here. I mean, really bright. It's, you know, not entirely clear what it's doing, right? So there's something wrong with this program. Probably it's too clever for its own good. How might you write it? Well, you might write it like that, where it's clear, you still got the same two nested loops, but now the inner loop clearly sets an entire row to 0, and then the outer loop sets the diagonal element back to 1. Is that clearer? I think it's clearer in a modern language. I'd probably do it even differently. In some languages, there'd already be a thing called make me an identity matrix, but at least that's better. So anyway, the experience with that, the book that Dick brought in, his continuous nagging about how people do not program well, and why can't we do something about it, led me and Bill Plugger to write a book which was called The Elements of Programming Style. And that's the title which Jim and Scott put on the announcement for this gathering here. The approach that we used in that book was actually ripped off, both the title and the approach was ripped off from another wonderful book called The Elements of Style by Strunk and White, which is a very good, very compact book on how to write English well. The approach in the elements of style, and therefore the elements of programming style, was to say, here's something that's not very well written, here's what's wrong with it, here's how you might make it better, and here is the rule that you might derive from seeing the process of going from bad to good. And so what we did in the elements of programming style was simply take a large number of examples of bad stuff and make them better and put up a bunch of rules as a result. Now, that was a very long time ago. That book was published in 1974. The world is quite different. In that book, we wrote in Fortran 66 and in PL1, a language which I conjecture none of you have ever used. Fortunately, it's dead. Today, people write in Fortran 9x mostly, or they write in C or C++ or Java, or they use scripting languages like pick your favorite. So the world is very different. The examples in that book came actually, and I think this is one of the things that made it fun, the examples came from programming textbooks, like this one. The idea was here were people telling you how to program well, and they couldn't do it themselves. I guess you could argue this is history repeating itself, but what the heck, I'm arrogant and I'm at the front of the room. So what I'm going to do today is more of the same kind of thing, but I'm going to use examples that are taken from a slightly broader collection of sources. They come some from programming textbooks, some come from real programs that I have found. Some of them are fresh that I found while Googling around looking for interesting code that might be suitable for a collection of computational astrophysicists. Some of them are probably code that was written by computational astrophysicists. Some of them are written by students in my class. Sadly, a couple of handful of them are written by me, just to show you that nobody is perfect. So anyway, in a way, this is old stuff, right? People knew that you should program well long, long time ago, even before Bill Plugger and I started writing about this in the 70s. But in fact, people still don't write necessarily really well all the time, although I think the average standard has gotten a lot better. The principles of how to write well haven't changed. The details change, right? The languages are different. We have a lot more computing horsepower to work with. But the principles of writing clearly in a form that other people can understand haven't changed a bit in all of those years. So let's look at some of them, okay? Most of these are pretty small, because they've got to be examples that fit on the screen. Most of the examples, I just went back and looked, are in C, which you could then think of as C++, but nothing very complicated, or Java, nothing very complicated, and some in Fortran in various guises. But as I say, the principles, although the details would be different in different languages, again, the principles are pretty much independent of language. So let's look at one. Here's one, just to see. Okay, so this uses a construct in C, which is nice shorthand sometimes, but obviously badly overused or abused from time to time, the question mark colon operator. So what's this do? I'd literally never seen this construct before somebody asked me, what does it do, maybe a year ago. It's not that it's illegal, it's absolutely perfectly legal. It's like, what the heck does this do? Let me walk you through it. It says, if armed, in other words, if armed is non-zero, whatever that is, this is some kind of device controller, I guess, then if v count is greater than or equal to the threshold, do the ... On the other hand, if armed is not true, false, equals 0, then v count is less than or equal to the threshold, do the ... So the comment that goes with this is wrong, right? Because it says if it exceeds the threshold, but it also does something if it doesn't exceed the threshold. So clearly the comment doesn't agree with the code. We'll come back to that kind of stuff later. The problem with this is it's a little too clever for easy understanding. It's not that you can't figure it out, but you got to work at it. And you shouldn't have to work at figuring out what a piece of code does when it's this simple. So if you're willing to blow a few more characters, you can get something that's a little better, right? If it's armed and the count is bigger than the threshold, or if it's not armed and the count is less than the threshold, then do the ... right? So that's clearer. I don't have to explain it to you. You can read it. There are still things that you might argue could be done better. I don't have any parentheses there other than the ones around the if. What's the relative precedence of and or? Well, I know the right answer there because I've been doing this stuff for a long time, but you could argue maybe parenthesizing it differently would make it a little clearer. Hard to say. That one I won't argue with. I think of that as a second order issue, but the first order issue is just a mess, okay? Alrighty, so don't be too clever. And this is going to be your problem because you're all very clever people. Looking at the mathematics that goes into this stuff, it's clear. Cleverer than I am. On the other hand, it's quite possible for clever people to blow it in the other direction, and you don't want to be too dumb. Because you may be clever in one area and, like all of us, dumb in a different area. And this is a fine example, I think, of being too dumb. What's going on here? We've got a bunch of stuff. We got the guy is defining an array of one character, a blank, and then he's got 4 function calls to various C string comparison and copying things to do something. What on earth is going on here? You know, it's a big, heavyweight, at least sort of, mechanism to do something. If you look at it carefully, you realize that this is all he's doing. He's saying if that first character is not a blank, then if it's a digit, copy it. Right? So you don't need any function calls. No function calls, none of that stuff. You don't have to go to the manual and remember what the argument order is for stir and comp and what it means and whether it copies the extra byte on the end and all this kind of stuff. You don't have to think about it. Okay? So there's a balance that you have to find between too clever and not clever enough, being really kind of dim about what you're doing. And sometimes you can figure that out by a principle that I guess it's like keep it simple, stupid, but it's keep it simple, like this. Okay, so here's an example. Again, this is one I literally found while I was poking around looking for new examples last week while marooned in upper Pennsylvania on the slowest internet connection known to man. What does this do? Well, it says remove all spaces. And in fact, it does remove all spaces. But you notice a lot going on. It calls strlen, give me the length of a string, several times. It calls this strpberk. I don't know how you pronounce these things. This is not my fault. Which basically, I think, says find me the next blank in the input. And then it does a mem move, which copies stuff from here, one character over. How much do you copy? Well, the length of the pointer plus 1. Okay, so in decrement, length, etc. And when you're done, terminate. There's a lot going on there. What's it doing? How long did you suppose it took this person to get that right? Okay, it must have been an amazing length of time to get it right. And the problem is, libraries are good. Library functions are your friend because it means that you can use code that somebody else wrote, and once they got it right, you don't have to worry about it anymore. And so these things like strcpy and memmove and so on are things you ought to use. No ambiguity. But there are times when you don't need to use them, and at that point, you probably want to back off a little. And this is all that's going on. Walk along the string, and if it's not a blank, copy it. Right? And so I can describe that to you really easily. That's all you have to do, and the job is done. It's much simpler this way. I wrote it with pointers here. You could write it with array subscripts if you feel happier with that. The code is almost identical. They both work. This is odd. It can't matter. It cannot matter, but this code is going to run a boatload faster because that other one is somewhere between quadratic and cubic in the number of blanks in the line because of all of that testing and finding the next blank and then moving things over using the string length of what's left. It's an amazingly inefficient algorithm. Can't matter in that particular context, but I've been told that people who do cosmological simulations or whatever occasionally worry about efficiency. So anyway, part of the problem with these things is you get the sense that the person who's writing code doesn't really understand the language properly, or their understanding is a little shaky sometimes. So here's a nice example. This one actually comes from a piece of student code. Undergrads, not grad students. Grad students have learned it all. Do you sense a pattern here? You know, as I will probably say this again, but computers are really good at doing things that have repetitive patterns, and so it occurs to you that you could probably do something better. And so this one, I probably don't even have to show you how to do it, but right, it's basically that. If that index I, all it's doing is converting an integer between 0 and 9 into its ASCII character equivalent. And the way you do that is just add the ASCII value 0, and that works fine in the ASCII character set. No reason not to do that. Okay? So you got to know your language, and if you do, you convert 10 lines of stuff down into basically 1 or 2 lines that are going to be a lot easier to work with. Okay. Here's another one. This is a piece of Java code that appeared. And I drew a little tiny picture so you could get an idea of what it is. This is an example of bit whacking. I think bit whacking is something that doesn't get done very much in scientific computing, where you get basically bits and you want to manipulate them as bits. And I think lots of people in building tools, network kinds of things, device controllers, all kinds of weird things do bit whacking. I suspect you don't do nearly as much bit whacking as numerical stuff in your particular field, but it's still useful to know how to do it. This one is kind of interesting because the task is to say, here is a 16-bit number, and I want to knock the top 8 bits to 0. I just want to set them to 0. So I want to preserve the bottom 8 bits. That's the make 8 bits. So the interesting thing is, if I set you that task, how many of you would go off and basically use an exponential to do it? What the heck is going on? This is the power function. You know? Why is he doing that? How is he doing it? Well, what he's doing is starting over there at the 15th bit position, the one on the left, and he's saying, let's compute 2 to the 15th, and then if the number I am dealing with, the number that I'm trying to reduce, is bigger than 2 to the 15th, then I can subtract 2 to the 15th from it. So I've knocked that bit off. And then we'll keep doing that until we get down through the 8th bit, and then we're done. Okay? This is kind of interesting. Oh, and I checked, because I couldn't remember for sure. The power function, this is in Java, the power function actually takes doubles as its argument. So this is in principle being done as double precision floating point, although I suspect that somebody inside is saying, hey, wait a minute, those are integers. So this is just bizarre. How would you write it? How should you write it? How about that? Right? Take the value, preserve the bits you want with the AND operator and probably hexadecimal constant, because those are the easiest to represent real bits. That's those bits. Okay? Not very complicated. Let me give you one more bit whacking example just because I have it sitting here. And it's a lead into something else that I want to talk about in a moment. So again, imagine that we have a 16-bit quantity. You'll have to, this is close enough for astronomical purposes, right? Think of this as 16. What's that old line about? 10 to the 50th plus or minus 10, right? Yeah, it's close enough. So anyway, 16 bits like this. And all this job is supposed to be, all this little macro is supposed to be doing is that, right? Just interchanging the upper half and the lower half of this 16-bit quantity. So how does it do it? Well, it says take the part in the, take the whole number and then mask off the top part. That's the AND 0xFF. We just saw that. Okay, and left shift that 8. Okay, so we took the right part and we moved it left. And then it says add to that what you get by targeting the original number, masking off the bottom stuff, shift that right 8, and you're done, right? So you took the bottom part and moved it to the top, and you took the top part and moved it to the bottom. Okay, look good? By now you should know not to trust me. What's wrong with it? Yeah, negative number is one of those things that could happen. In fact, let's talk about that. One of the possibilities here, some machines do sign extension, that is arithmetic operations like shifts, extend the sign. So if that quantity A had its top bit turned on, when you shifted it right, that would leave a trail of 1 bits behind, right? So that means, and the masking is done in the wrong place there. So you can see you take these 1 bits, you just lay them out across that, and then you would add to that what you got by shifting the other thing left. And when you shift the one left, it fills in with 0 bits no matter what the machine architecture is, so you don't need the mask there. So that's, you know, bad, worse. In fact, those aren't the real problems. You know what the real problem is? What's the relative precedence of plus and the shift operators? Well, I'll tell you. The shift operators are much lower precedence than the plus operator. So what this is doing is computing something not very meaningful on the left side, and then it's left shifting it by 8 plus whatever that not very meaningful computation on the right side is, and then shifting the whole thing back over 8. Right? So this does nothing sensible at all. This cannot possibly work. But it did come from an article on how to do machine-independent computation. I guess you could argue this machine independent is totally wrong on all machines. Okay, so the deal is you can write it like that, and that actually is correct for 16 bits. And you notice that shifting it left, you don't need to do anything, and shifting it right, you've got to do the ANDing at the right place. And you notice that I didn't use the plus, I used the OR, because the OR is at the right level of precedence. Okay, and so a kind of a warning sign, at least if you're looking at C or C++ or Java code, the precedence of the logical operators is well down, and so you have to be very careful if you find yourself with mixtures of logical operators down here and arithmetic operators up here, because without parentheses, the precedence, the association is just going to be wrong, guaranteed. Okay? There's another thing that's wrong with this. It's not an actual error in this piece of code, but it's a suspect construct. It uses macros. So the original C definition had the C preprocessor. It has a macro processor of somewhat strange properties sometimes. And there are perils using macros. And macros is something that you probably do use in your C and C++ code to some extent. Or if you don't use them yourselves because you are wise, those who went before you did use them, and they're not so wise. Like this. I mentioned that function called isDigit. Takes a value, ASCII character, and says is it a digit or not. So this is a possible implementation of that as a macro. Okay? And you'll find dozens, if not hundreds, of textbooks that say, sure, you could do it this way. What's the potential problem with that? Well, one potential problem is that the way that macros work is it's simple textual substitution. So when somebody in the rest of the program, in the ... says isDigit of something, the something is plugged into 2 places in the resulting expression. And therefore, depending on how the expression works, it may get evaluated twice. And if it has a side effect, then you've done more than you thought you did. And in fact, I found this in some piece of code that I think was processing JPEG images. I can't remember now. On the web, found it last week, in this context. So what this is doing is saying every time we want to test a piece of the input, we call isDigit with something that has a side effect. So if, when you call it, that value at jx at the current point is greater than or equal to 0, then you decrement jx a second time, thus comparing something unrelated to 9. And so this code is completely wrong. And it's going to fail in an utterly mysterious way. And this is one where I speak from bitter experience. I must have spent 2 or 3 days of my life quite a while ago trying to figure out why a program I wrote was basically only producing about half the output that it was supposed to do. And the reason was that I had an isPrint, you know, another in this family, in that was, and I was invoking it with something that had a side effect. And so every other character, most of the time, was just disappearing. And the only good thing is it wasn't my fault, because the function I was using, the isPrint, came from the compiler manufacturer, who ought to have known better, but didn't. So, mysterious hardly characterizes it. Okay. One of the reasons that people use macros in C, by the way, is it's a reason that no longer, I think, it has any validity whatsoever. But they used to use them because they were more efficient, in the sense that with a macro, you could get something that had the semantics, more or less, of a function call, but didn't have any function call overhead. And in machines of my vintage, you know, like ENIAC, machines of my vintage, subroutine overhead was a serious factor. For most purposes today, I think you can safely ignore it, or at least it's not a first-order consideration at all. But people use macros to try and make things go faster. And here's a wonderful example, again, found very recently in the last few days. It's a huge macro called fast, memcopy, okay? So memcopy is one of these things that says, here's a block of memory,